Thank you, James.
Guneshish, Anish Ka, Yuhatusak, Tlingit, Tlena, Daklawedi, Ayahat, Ish, Ahutsnu Kwan, Yasati, Guneshish. My name is James Johnson. I'm Tlingit Indian from Southeast Alaska. I belong to the Daklawedi clan, which is the killer whale clan. My family lineage is from the Hutsunu Kwan, which is Angoon, Alaska. My Tlingit name is Anish Ka, which means man who stands alone strong. And that name was given to me by my grandfather, Chief Peter Johnson of Hutsunu. My family lineage, they were all Daklawedi chiefs of Hutsunu. My great-grandfather was Chief Jimmy Johnson, and my great-great-grandfather was Chief Gushtahin, and his name means spray off the dorsal fin of the killer whale. And I'm a Tlingit artist and carver.
James, you were going to tell us something about Tlingit culture as a beginning point. Could you do that now?
Yeah, the Tlingit art form is thousands of years old, dating back 10,000 years in Southeast Alaska. There's no word for art in our language. So all the pieces that you see from our katiyas, which is our totem poles, to our bentwood boxes, our masts, our paddles, all these items were completely integrated as part of our culture and our way of life. Everything was extremely beautiful, but also functional. And the history of our people was an oral history that had been passed down from generation to generation. And the art form was an integral part in telling that story and that history of this is who we are and this is where we came from. And so back then you weren't called an artist for your clan, you were called a Atkashak, which is carver. You were a carver for your clan. And as a carver, you're really highly regarded amongst your people because you're, again, carrying on this tradition and the stories of our people through the art form.
I'm going to backtrack just a minute because I was so intrigued by your name. At what age were you given the name Man Who Stands Along Strong?
Yeah, that was my grandfather's traditionally, you're given your Tlingit name by your grandfather, usually right when you're born. And that name was also my father's name. My late father, Franklin Johnson, carried that name, Anish Ka, and that was given to him by my great-grandfather. And that's who I'm named after, James Peter Johnson, named after my grandfathers. Like my dad, before he passed away, he gave my son his Tlingit name, which is Sinhuts, which means strong bear.
So just to get started, and I am just really impressed with your artwork, and I can see something behind you on the wall, and I think it's a paddle. Could you tell us about that piece?
Yeah, like our people, we're seagoing people. We travel by canoe all through Southeast Alaska. And like the paddle was a beautiful but functional piece of art that was integrated within our culture. Every person, man, woman, and child took part in the canoe journeys that took place. And the paddles were carved. This one's carved out of red cedar. Has a bear design on it in form line. But a lot of the paddles you'll see were extremely beautiful, elegant pieces of art, but also, again, like highly functional and necessary.
So how did you learn to become a carver?
Well, I taught myself the fundamentals of the art form, which was definitely the long way around. Traditionally, in the old days, the second a young boy showed any kind of talent or interest in carving, he immediately started apprenticing under the master carvers of his clan. And it was believed that if a boy had a natural ability, he was reincarnated from a previous carver's life. But I studied the old pieces of my ancestors. They really set the standard for what we're doing today within the art form. And so, again, it took years of studying old pieces and drawing. The foundation for the art form is called form line. And that terminology, form line, was developed actually really recently in the 1960s by Bill Holm. He was a University of Washington professor who studied the Northern style art form, which is Tlingit, Haida, and Tsimshian, and developed the terminology that we use today for the art form. But to be a carver, you have to have a really strong understanding of form line design. There's a lot of rules that go along with these the designs you see. Lines have to be spaced a certain amount, colors have to be exact. And like, when I was first learning the art form, one of the all-time greatest Tlingit carvers living is Nathan Jackson. His Tlingit name is Yeshledi. He carves in Saxman, Alaska, but he critiqued my work, and one of his biggest critiques was the eye socket on the form line. He said, you're opening it up 1/8 of an inch too much. And so you can imagine, if that's a big critique, what everything else entails for it to be proper form line. This photo is really great. Nathan, this is in Saxman, Alaska, and I got to go visit him pre-COVID for a nice afternoon. But Nathan, he's one of the all-time greatest Tlingit carvers living. When Bill Clinton was in office, he deemed Nathan a national treasure for the work that he was doing. When I was first learning the art form in 2012, I was involved in a big juried show in Alaska called Celebration. And Celebration is 3 days of celebration of our culture and heritage for Tlingit, Haida, and Tsimshian people. And there's a big juried art show that goes along with that, the celebration. And it's a really difficult show to get into. They want to feature the best of the best artwork that's representative of our people, saying this is the best work of our people right now. And Nathan selected one of my masks to be featured in the show. And I was so excited, having someone that prestigious select my work. And I asked him to critique my work and try to help me get on the right path. And Nathan's really blunt. He's really direct. And he's told me, look, you're good. I see your potential in the art form, but the work you're doing right now is garbage. And, that made me feel like, well, you killed your ego immediately. But he said, this is what you need to focus on. You need to focus back on drawing and focus on form line. He said, the better you are at form line and drawing, the better carver you're going to become. And so, I'm really thankful that Nathan really set me on that really strong path to get to where I'm at today.
We had a question that came in, and one of the folks participating today asked if the Tlingit people still use paddles in any way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the old days, like our culture and our way of life was seamless. It was everything was integrated, and it was a really beautiful way. The University of Anchorage professor Stephen Langdon has studied Tlingit culture for the last 30 years, and he coined the term obligatory reciprocity, which means we lived in this balance, this continuous balance with each other, with the earth, environment, animals. And so our people lived in this way, and traveling by canoe was our mode of transportation. And these days, modern days, there's select events like Celebration that happens in my hometown, Juneau, that gathering of all these people. They do a traditional canoe journey where all the canoes land for celebration, like it's a traditional called kuweek, which is a potlatch. Like all the tribes would gather in a certain location, and they'll use it like that paddle. I pull that thing off the wall and use it. Exactly.
We had another interesting question in it, and it leads into something that we were discussing in preparation for the talk today. One of our viewers would like you to explain the use of colors, and then perhaps if you could, as we were talking yesterday, if you could talk about the original sources of those colors too.
Yeah, absolutely. Our traditional colors, the art form dates back. Our people have been in Southeast Alaska for 10,000 years, and the art form goes back. There's petroglyphs in Wrangell carved into rocks on the beach that date back 8,000 years. and the form line on those rocks is developed. You can tell exactly the images that are on it. And so traditionally, the art form, the primary colors is black, red, and the blue green. And it was derived actually from like the black was used charcoal from fire. Then you had red ochre for the red. Then the blue green was copper minerals, and the binding agent was salmon eggs. Like salmon for our people is our principal food source for thousands of years. And they use the salmon eggs. The artist would take a handful of it and put it in their mouth and chew it up to get a consistency, then put it into a dish and mix those pigments into the cup to create the paint that they would use. So like a lot of the really old pieces you see in some museum collections, like that's the exact paint that's on it. It's pretty worn off and heavily patinaed, but that's the traditional colors that our people used.
And the piece that, oops, went away. Okay. The piece that was on the screen also had abalone inset. Was that a traditional material that was inset into
Yeah,
carvings?
exactly. Yeah, our people used abalone to decorate a lot of the artwork. This is a killer whale clan hat I carved, honoring my grandfathers. The Smithsonian had a piece looked exactly like this, or pretty close, that they had in their collection for close to 100 years, and they got repatriated back to my grandfather's clan, Daklawedi. And this piece is based off of that and honors that piece. But yeah, this is something it's called Keat Sauk, and this piece I carved honoring them. But you'll see the abalone insets. You'll see the 3 primary colors used. This piece actually took first place at Celebration in 2020. Man, it took top 5 too in top 5 sculpture pieces in Santa Fe market 2020 as well, and it was also in the Rocky Mountain Biennial at the Museum of Art in Fort Collins. Is selected to be featured, and that was kind of an interesting thing I did. If you want to go to the next slide, you'll see, yeah, here it is at the Museum of Art in Fort Collins. There's my Bentwood box kind of in the background too, but this is really interesting show because it was a show that was featuring artists in all the states that are on the Rocky Mountain range. And there was 2,500 artists that were applied for it, and they chose 58. And the lead juror was Leah Ullman. She's a art critic for the LA Times for like the last 20 years. And so she really understands art. But I purposely entered traditional Tlingit artwork into this contemporary show. This wasn't even a native art show. This was just an art show. You know, I was the only native artist in this show. But both of my pieces got honorable mentions, which was really admirable. But I did that on purpose because, you know, after the turn of the early 1900s, when you see our work, you know, our culture and our way of life was coming to an end, and pieces had left Alaska and they're in these museum collections, they really started looking at the art form and saying the work of this it can't be boxed into one thing. It borderlines fine art, how well our people is and how amazing the art form is. So to put this piece into that setting was almost like an experiment for me. I wanted to see how to do, but I was really honored to have it featured.
We had a question about the button blanket at the very beginning of the slideshow, and could you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the traditional, like most people are familiar with it's called nahin, which is our chilkat blankets that you'll see. And weaving is an incredible art form. And there's been a resurgence of it, but honestly, there's only a handful of people that could produce those, the nahin chilkat blankets. But from the trade, the first contact with our people, with the Tlingit, was in the late 1700s for the commodity was sea otter pelts. So we had Russian fur traders, European fur traders, South American fur traders, all coming to Southeast Alaska for sea otter pelts. And that was the commodity. And our people traded they had blankets, wool blankets that they would trade for the pelts. And that's where the button blankets first originated from. They'd have these wool blankets, and they're decorated, and they'd put their clan crests on it, and they'd use it during our kuik, our ceremony. We'd have, like, for me, like, I'm Eagle Killer Whale is my clan, and so on the back of my button blanket here is an eagle crest design that I'm wearing, and it has abalone buttons on it. Really beautiful. You always honor and represent your clan. So yeah, this is a really beautiful piece. I'm proud to have that button blanket.
Sorry. Uh, when did you start making art? Just to back up a little bit, because you said in 2012, you were in the juried show, and that's when you had that really impactful moment with Nathan Jackson. But when did you start making art?
Yeah, I started gaining an interest in it in 2008 as I started carving. And again, like, it was such a big undertaking, but then once I started doing it, I realized I started seeing the composition and the balance of form line that came kind of natural for me to learn it. And then started doing pieces, and had nothing really to base it off of. And then until Nathan saw it in 2012 and saw, like, the potential for what I was doing. So yeah, it's something that I've dedicated my life to. The artists I look up to, they're all in their 70s and 80s, like, really masters of the art form. And so I'm relatively new into it, and so but I've dedicated my life to it, and I'm going to push it up until the end and create as many pieces as I can throughout my lifetime.
Now, we had another question. What kind of paint do you use typically today, like on the paddle or other
Yeah,
pieces?
acrylics. Every modern day artist uses acrylic.
You mentioned balance in life, and also balance in the art, and it appears that the artwork really does have a sense of balance. Maybe we could look at a particular piece and talk about that if Dan pulls up a piece.
Sure. Or we could talk about this one real quick.
Oh, great idea.
Yeah, this is good. I was speaking about my grandfathers before. This is a picture of my great-great-grandfather, Chief Curator. He's the one holding the dagger on the screen there, and that's called Keet Gwala. That's a really famous dagger that he has, and he has his clan hat on. But yeah, this is my family, and this is a really old photo. And the work that I do is powerful because I wanna honor them with what I'm doing. I wanna, when I finish a piece, I want to imagine placing it in front of them and having them say, "This is good. This is what representative of our people." So you're carrying forward this incredible lineage, And yeah, I'm really proud to have this photo. This is really special.
Could you tell us a little bit more, going back a little bit more about the dagger? You were telling us something about it.
Yeah, from our culture too, you're raised from age 7. Every young Tlingit boy was raised to become a warrior, and they actually left their mother and father, and they were raised by their uncle. And part of the warrior training that occurred, a yell would go out. Our people lived in what they call kwans. Kwans, you can think of as like a village. So a yell would go out in the kwan every morning, and all the young men would have to get up and go down to the ocean, and they would sit in the cold ocean. That was part of their training. It was training to strengthen their mind and strengthen their bodies to withstand the harsh elements of Alaska. And it was really strict upbringing. But the part of the training too is every boy was proficient in using a dagger during warfare, and everyone carried one around their neck at all times. That was the last thing you took off before you went to bed, was you had your dagger. But this one, Keet Gwala, is a really famous one. It was repatriated back to our clan, which was incredible. But I was just at the Burke Museum last month, and the curator, she did a whole dissertation on Tlingit daggers. And when we were talking, she found out that my great grandfather was Chief Curator. The first thing she said was, "Oh my gosh, the Kit Gwala, that's like the pinnacle of Tlingit daggers." It said it was forged from a meteor. That was the story that came from it. But yeah, that's a really incredible piece. Actually, the top of the handle is a killer whale clan crest. If you look, it's kind of hard to decipher it, but yeah, killer whale clan crest. I have it tattooed on my hand. Actually, that crest design. Um, yeah, pretty incredible.
We have a lot of interest in designs, and just looking at this photo, oh, this is
Yeah,
great.
yeah. This is a salmon stream time lapse. This was for a movie that you guys actually showed at the herd called Gather by Sanjay Rawal from New York City. And he asked me to do a time lapse for the movie for promotion. And this was 6 days of painting in 20 seconds. My friend Ian Tetzner, he's a local Arizona photographer. He's top notch. He shoots all my work. But we had this set up and we had a photo going every 20 seconds above my head, and a photo would go on. But yeah, this is a beautiful piece. Salmon, it honors our people. Salmon was our principal food source for our people for thousands of years. And kind of a quick little story about Fog Woman. Raven was traveling in the fog and became lost and couldn't find his way. And this beautiful woman appeared and took off his spruce root hat, and all the fog went into it so he could see where he was going. And as a gift, she gave Raven salmon, something that he had never had before. And he was so excited, he married her. And he became so obsessed with the salmon that he began to mistreat Fog Woman. And so she left him. And as she was leaving, she called back all the salmon again. So Raven was left with nothing. And as he tried to grab her, she turned to fog and disappeared. But Fog Woman also had two beautiful daughters that lived at the head of the stream. And that's the reason why the salmon return to the stream each year, to see their beauty one last time before they die. So that's the story of Fog Woman.
Thank you. I think, oh, yes, we had a question about this piece. If you could talk about the different parts of it, or sort of explain the different parts of this.
Yeah, well, you have again, like the front of it, you'll see the killer whale face with his teeth, his abalone, abalone. And then you go up in the center, there's a blowhole. There's a circle abalone piece for his blowhole. And then back from the head, you have the body, then you have his fin on the side, and the tail fin is on the back. The fluke is going up vertical with the face in it. And then the horsehair coming off of it is like my great grandfather, the spray off the dorsal fin. So it's supposed to be like water coming off. But it's fully hollowed out. Like you wear that on your head and tie it and wear it. So functional piece. That piece right now is in South Dakota. I have a museum show opening with the U.S. Department of Interior January 28th at the Sioux Indian Museum in Rapid City. So that piece is up there for that show.
You know, that raises another question that one of our viewers asked. Do you mentor young artists? Do you work with people who are wanting to learn how to carve?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I learned everything on my own, which was the long way around, hard. And so like when I get approached by young artists and they want to know like, where do I start? I encourage all of them and help them out. I was just hired this last year to teach at the Port Townsend School of Woodworking. So I'm teaching, they hired me to teach Tlingit carving classes up in Washington. And passing on that knowledge that I know onto the next generation is vital. That's our traditional way, is sharing this knowledge. Yeah, here's a photo. This is a paddle carving class I did. Week-long, pretty intensive class. A lot of the people first time touching carving tools, and we got through the week. And I stress to them too that what really separates artists is the finish work you put into the piece. you don't want to rush it. You get to a certain point and you take your time, resharpen your knives, and really make the piece extraordinary. So I said, by the end of the week, I don't want you holding up a full sanded, painted paddle. I go, take it home and keep working on it. But I showed them every cut necessary to get to this point. But yeah, it was incredible. We had people that flew in from all over the country to take this class. And a week after this photo, I'll have 3 classes next year, and all 3 classes sold out. So
Okay, I'm going to ask a question that you might think is ridiculous. And I'm looking at these different parts of the cedar tree. So to carve a paddle, do you start with a chunk
oh,
of tree like that?
looking at the stumps on the ground, you mean?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. No, those were our workstations. Like that's pretty much identical to like what I work on now. Like I'll carve on a stump and do all my roughing, shaping on a stump. But no, those were like the cedar in the old days. The cedar, the red, especially red cedar, the grain is so straight and true that they could peel off sheets of cedar and it would be almost ready to go. And then you could start carving from that. Really straight vertical grain. They carved our totem poles were carved out of red cedar. Our clan houses were carved out of red cedar. The big long planks, they just stripped those off the tree and use those. Canoes carved out of red cedar. Really a beautiful wood. That's our traditional wood is red cedar and yellow cedar. That's what we use for everything.
We had a question. Are there any women who are carvers?
Yeah, absolutely. Traditionally, no. In the old days, they were weavers. The women would weave the chilcat blankets. They do the incredible basketry work. They do a lot of the regalia, and the men would do the carving. But these days, yeah, women artists. It started in the 1960s. There's a Haida carver named Frida Deasing. She's a woman and incredible carver. And there's a school in BC named after her that teaches carving, Frida Deasing Northwest Coast Carving School. But yeah, these days there's some incredible women carvers. My friend Allison Bremner, I just saw her at the Burke Museum last month. She came and saw me when I was there. Incredible artist, incredible carver.
Well, I think if we could take a look at some of the slides that and if you could tell us about some of these individual pieces.
Yeah, this was Bentwood box I did. This was in I think it was 2019, Santa Fe. I entered it, took first place for sculpture, which was awesome. But then the Art Institute of Chicago saw it and said, we want this in our collection. And it's actually going on display in March in Chicago. But I don't know, I'm proud of it. I'm proud to be able to take, traditional Tlingit art form and have it exist in this setting with fine art. It just shows the quality of our ancestors and what they were capable of doing. I saw that.
Can we go? I'm sorry. Can we go back to the Bentwood?
Yeah,
box?
I saw the question come in. So a Bentwood box is made from a single sheet of cedar. You cut 3 kerf cuts on it, and you cut those kerfs and you steam it and steam bend it. So the corners are all rounded, and the last corner is pegged. But Bentwood boxes were some of the most prized pieces our people created. We'd use Bentwood boxes for food storage. Women would use it for cooking. They're watertight, so they could heat rocks from a fire, put it in the bottom and put water in it, and make the water boil and cook in it. The boxes that were carved and painted were typically owned by high-ranking chiefs in the clan. And during our kuik, during our potlatch ceremonies, they'd display all their Bentwood boxes as a symbol of wealth. The way you do it for Bentwood box, I have another picture of it too, but you paint the design on there. Here we go. You paint the black and the red, the primary and secondary design elements on there. And everywhere you see wood gets recess carved. So you paint it first, then carve those lines where everywhere you see wood gets carved. Then the places that are recess carved down get painted the blue-green. And that's like the procedure for doing a bentwood box.
So in terms of balance, and we were talking yesterday, it's almost like the design is split or like this is a mirror
Yeah.
reflection. Can you tell us what this is representing and talk a little bit more about these separate parts?
Yeah, well, the bentwood box design is actually, you wouldn't see this design in anything other than bentwood boxes. This design style was used specifically for bentwood boxes. Up and down the coast, they used bentwood boxes for a lot of trade and a lot of items. But northern style Tlingit, this is how you'd see it. You'd also see it a lot of the time in the boxes like this. Chests are rectangular. Those are called chests. These are boxes that are square. But you'll see the design put right on the corner. It's, for me, like it's something I've always wanted to learn. So I'm really happy to do bentwood boxes because I thought they're so incredibly beautiful and functional and powerful, you know, and to carve it too. Like you have to be really skilled with your knife to do it. Like 90% of that box is carved with my straight knife, just a standard straight knife that we use. We make one cut, then come back and do a V cut on the other side to remove the wood. Really a slow process, but you have to trust your ability to do it. And yeah, I love doing them. I've done a few of them.
So in preparation for this, we had an interesting question. Do you outline or draw on the wood, or do you just start
No,
painting and then carving?
no, you draw it first, pencil drawing, draw it out, balance it out. Even the old boxes, you'd see charcoal marks on the old stuff, you know, so they're drawing it out as well first and balancing it. But you'll see, like, you know, like Bill Holm too, like he studied a lot of bentwood boxes. He just passed away not too long ago, but he really dissected almost every box along the coast and made an incredible book that features it. And you know, without that knowledge, you know, a lot of us today wouldn't have this understanding of bentwood boxes and the design elements that go into creating these.
Does this one have specific, almost like, are there fins on this? Are there bird heads or raven heads, or
Yeah,
is in different placements here?
yeah. The elements of the bentwood box. In the old days, what they would do, they'd push abstraction with it, and they wouldn't name it. The carvers wouldn't name it, and when they would be gifted to the chief, he would interpret what he saw and give it the box a name. Then it wasn't up to the carver to do it. But yeah, this box is a bear design on it and a human design.
Great, so interesting. Ooh, this is
Yeah, there's
wonderful.
another one. This is yellow cedar with a red cedar lid and base. I left this one unpainted and carved it. This one is more, I guess, a contemporary box where it tells a story of how Raven released the sun into the sky. So all the designs are on each corner. So each corner is symmetrical design on all four corners, and they all balanced each other out. And so yeah, that's a box I just did this year. That one's in South Dakota as well, at the museum that's opening here.
And the museum in South Dakota, which one is it? We had a
Yeah,
question about that.
I worked with the U.S. Department of Interior the last 2 years on this exhibit, and really incredible working with them. And yeah, it's at the Sioux Indian Museum in South Dakota in Rapid City. They said they have a museum in DC, then one in Montana, and the one in South Dakota. And they said, whichever one you want to have an exhibit in, let's do it. And so, yeah, I chose South Dakota. So I was just there last month, going over all my pieces. But yeah, the show opens in person and online January 28th. It's entitled Visual Language.
Love those titles. We just had a really interesting question. So as an artist, do you have creative license to use any design that you want and any interpretation that you want, or do you have to follow particular guidelines?
Sure. No, it's Tlingit style is what I do. And like to learn that style, like the lines have to be spaced a certain amount. Like the thickness of the line has to be a certain amount for it to be Tlingit. Um, and so you have to learn all those rules and guidelines to create these pieces. And you know, you look at Northwest Coast art, Tlingit is the northernmost tribe on the coast. You have northern coast, central coast, southern coast. You know, you have Tlingit, Haida, Tsimshian, then you get the central coast, you have Bella Bella, Helsik, then you get to southern portion, you have Salish, where as you go further south, the colors change, the lines change, everything changes about the art form. So yeah, you learn the fundamentals of the art form, but what really makes you an artist is you develop your own style within that art form. And that's like your signature style within it. Yeah, it takes years, just takes years to develop that style. Like I could look at pieces in museums and see things and I know exactly who did it. I don't have to see who signed it, you know. This is a seal bowl carved out of red cedar. I have a really fascination the last like 2 years with bowls. You're sculpting three-dimensionally, and then it's also functional. You know, the foundation of our culture was our kuwik, which is our potlatch ceremony. And kuwik means to give. And so everyone that would participate in the kuwik is also your notary public, where if you just by your attendance, it meant you're in agreement of this event, the naming of a chief, the death of a chief, the raising of a katia, totem pole, will all call for a kuwik. That's something at the ceremony you'd have to feed everybody that attended. And so like they'd spend a lot of time, years sometimes, gathering food to host a kuwik. But that food and those things were served in these beautiful dishes and bowls like this. So a lot of the time you'll see these in museums and they're all black. They're all black from Greece and they're so beautiful. This is an eagle bowl I carved out of red cedar, has abalone inset in the eye. But yeah, again, like the middle is all hollowed out, just like a bowl. This is again like another piece that's up in the museum in South Dakota.
Would these typically be unpainted, the bowls? Or was that a decision you made for these pieces?
No, a lot of them, you see some painted, a lot of them were left unpainted because again, like they'd fill that up with, you know, seal grease or fish grease and it turns black. The whole thing is black, you know. Oh yeah, this was from last month. I was at the Burke Museum in Seattle. They're so heavily rooted in Northwest Coast art. They kind of got wind of me. I was in the area teaching, and they asked me to come by, and I went through their whole collection. And they lined it up where they asked me to come back and do a carving demonstration for 2 days inside their studio. And so yeah, this is me carving inside the Burke Museum. That mask actually is finished now. I just finished it not too long ago here, but Tlingit Lux KD, which is a human portrait mask carved out of red cedar. It's a knife finish, so I didn't sand it. It's just all done with my knife. But that's the mask I was carving in that photograph.
What are the designs on the sides of the face of the mask you were just showing us?
It's a bear paw. When I was at the Burke, during our kuwik, the carvers would carve these like impression like stamps out of wood. And so during the kuwik, they'd dip it in paint and put it on their cheek and have their clan crests on their cheek. And so like I saw one there that had a similar design, Takeways, the Bear Clan. And so like I put those on each side of the face here.
We had a really interesting question. I hope I restate it. Are there ways in which you can break the rules and be okay?
It depends. I mean, that's always the discussion, is like contemporary versus traditional. That's always the discussion of it. The art form is always rooted in this real traditional sense. The form line, that's never going to change. Those rules and guidelines and colors. But then, like, someone like Nathan Jackson, Nathan strictly does traditional pieces. If it doesn't exist, 1,000 years in our culture, he's not going to do it. And the more that I like look back and study the old pieces, like I feel like this like grip on me saying like, this is the work that you need to do. But it's you could exist in both realms. You could do full contemporary pieces, and I work for companies that produce, they license my work and put it on things and sell it, and so it depends, it depends who you talk to and kind of like which direction the artist wants to go in.
We had a question. You mentioned that one of the items had horsehair, and someone asked if human hair is ever put
Yeah.
on any of the masks.
Yes, yeah, I use horsehair and human hair. Traditionally, we use human hair, and again, like they'd scalp the hair off the enemies and put it on their pieces, and they believe it gave them supernatural powers. So the pieces you see in museums, that's the exact hair that's on it.
And where are you here?
This is at the Burke Museum in their collections, going through work. It's since I've kind of become more known Tlingit carver and artist, a lot of museums have opened their doors and let me study their collections. And I love doing it because you learn so much. But at the same time, it's really emotional looking at these pieces, because you put so much effort into carrying forward this art form, and you see a piece like this, and it's like you see that the intention of it is how it was meant to be used. And these items were passed down from generation to generation for thousands of years, and it's emotional too as you see stuff just on the shelf. See a mask just in the dark, and like that pieces were meant to be used, masks were meant to be worn and danced in. But yeah, it's emotional going through collections. I'm really happy though that I get to study those old pieces. But this is a killer whale Daklawedi war helmet. That was really, really old piece. But yeah, that was worn during battle. Really powerful. Here's a good example of form line design. This is a split head raven design. Again, like this was the original design was commissioned by the U.S. Department of Interior for their museum in Washington, D.C. And they have a few of my pieces in their D.C. museum, and really fortunate. The new U.S. Secretary Deb Haaland, when she got appointed, she got to go into their collection and choose pieces for her office. And she chose two of my works to be in her office, which was a tremendous honor. Yeah, so working with the U.S. Department of Interior has been great. It's kind of culminating with this whole museum exhibit opening this month. Yeah, pen design. This was I finished that. If you look at the images, I finished that Bentwood box that was unpainted, and I love the form line design in that. I wanted to use it again in a similar fashion, but this was a pen design commission I did for the Smithsonian a few months back, and this pen, it's not out yet, so this is kind of like a sneak peek here. But it depicts Raven releasing the sun into the sky, and yeah, this will be out I guess through the Smithsonian here in the next month, I want to say. It's a really beautiful pen. They sent me samples of it to have, and I gave it to my son to use, and he writes all over. But it's yeah, it's really cool to get these commissions from these people like the Smithsonian, and working with those people. So
that's a really nice honor. Now, we had a question about someone, I don't think we have an image to show them. They were asking about the inside of the mask. If
yeah,
they were curious to see, is there a difference between a a mask or a helmet that was carved for use and one that's carved for sale,
Yeah,
perhaps.
yeah, exactly. And like most of the masks, like you hollow out the inside of it, but they're used like they're meant to be worn. A lot of them for dancing, you'll have a bite bar going across the inside that will hold the mask in place. But yeah, the ones that go up on the wall, completely different. You have to make sure it's a, have attachments on there for it to not fall off. It was funny in Santa Fe. There was a raven mask I carved that was featured in the one of the jurors came and talked to me. And he's like, this wasn't really traditionally on the back, the inside. And I go, I know, because you told me it needed to be ready to hang. So that's how I did it, Otherwise, you'd have just a bite bar and strapping to hold it on. So yeah, everything's hollowed out though, and makes it really lightweight.
I really liked this image because, looking at the individual photos of the mask, but in this, you can actually see the size and the scale of the helmet mask. And I'm sorry, did you tell us what this one represents?
Yeah, this is an eagle headdress called Chak Sakwu. And the two top clans in our culture are eagle and raven. And our culture is matrilineal, where you follow your mother's clan. And when you marry the opposite, raven. Like, for example, like my mother is eagle, so I'm eagle. My wife is raven, my son's raven. And that preserves the balance in our culture. Like I was talking about earlier, the obligatory reciprocity, by Stephen Langdon, that applies to all things. But this headdress here depicts raven, which is one of my clan crests. It's a piece that you'd wear during our ceremonies in our kuwik. You'd wear a headdress like this. Again, like it's great to show the size of it. It's carved out of red cedar, and the inside's all hollowed out, so it's lightweight. Again, has abalone on the eyes, horsehair, and the back is a cape coming over with formline design on the back, a full eagle design on the back. That piece too is up in South Dakota as well.
And the garment that's
Yeah,
being worn here?
yeah, the garment doesn't quite go with it. That's called tu sankit, and it's constructed out of elk hide, and it's a traditional lightweight Tlingit armor piece with a shark design, a crest design on it. And you'll see the design where it's a single head with two symmetrical bodies coming down of it. That's like a traditional like formline design element. But yeah, our people, they would trade for elk hide from Oregon. It's not native to Alaska. So that during the trade time, pre-contact, they would trade for elk hide and construct their lightweight armor exactly in this fashion out of it. So I've done a few of these, and I really enjoy carrying forward that part of our culture. Yeah, this is a helmet, a sea lion helmet carved out of red cedar. I finished that one this year. That was from a big chunk of cedar shaping it. It's all hollowed out in the inside, so you wear it. But again, like studying, the history of our people with warfare and the art of the pieces that they made for warfare were incredible and beautiful. So yeah, this is a sea lion helmet. Those are real seal whiskers on the nose there, and wolf teeth for the teeth. But yeah, this is again a beautiful piece. It's up in South Dakota as well right now.
And we had a question about sanding. How much of this in your process, how much sanding do you have?
Yeah, well, you carve it down. The finish work you do onto a piece, you take it as far as you can and clean up everything as you can. A lot of carvers actually don't even sand. They just do knife finish, where you just take it as far down with the knife as you can. Like this mask is all knife finished, no sanding at all on it. And so like it's as preference and what you want to do. But you want to do minimal sanding when you get to the finished part. Traditionally, people use shark skin. That was the sandpaper they used to smooth out the mask, smooth out the pieces.
We had a question, were any pieces typically destroyed as a part of the culture?
Yeah, Yeah, that's almost a whole nother discussion, but to kind of cover that base, you know, colonization of Alaska, our way of life that existed for 10,000 years came to a really an abrupt end. It started with the fur trade in the late 1700s. From that contact, smallpox entered the Northwest Coast population, and that decimated 3/4 of our people. The Haida went from 12,000 to 400 people in one winter. And so losing that knowledge that had been passed down for this generation was tragic and sad. Then that led up until, conflict occurred in Alaska. And then 1867, when, the United States purchased Alaska from Russia, and the Tlingit weren't even allowed to be there during that purchase agreement. As silly as it sounds now, it was silly to them back then. They said, "What right do you have of selling our land that we've been here for 10,000 years? What right do you have to sell it to someone else?" And after that time, it was full cultural assimilation. They banned our kuik. You weren't allowed to host potlatch ceremony. You weren't allowed to dance. You weren't allowed to sing these songs that you did for thousands of years. For me as a carver, I wouldn't be allowed to carve. The mass and all these things, a lot of the stuff was destroyed and taken and gone. And then the final, like the turn of the late 1800s, when they saw our culture was coming to an end, and they saw the art form was becoming non-existent, expeditions went to Alaska to collect by any means necessary. And a lot of time that meant just taking pieces. And
This is such a serious discussion. I almost feel like we need another session
yeah,
just to cover some of these topics.
There was
And I
a lot,
really,
a lot left.
yeah,
Like thousands of pieces left. So
I really want to for folks to see the work that that you do with snowboarding and also skateboards, just so they'll know the full range of the
yeah,
work that.
yeah. So for me, like being an artist and grew up in Alaska. I'm a lifelong snowboarder. LibTech snowboards. They're like a worldwide snowboard brand. They love my work and asked me to be an artist for the company. And so I've done 4 different snowboard graphics for them. And it's really an honor to work with LibTech. And this picture is great. It's my friend Martin Sensmeyer. He's a Tlingit actor. Like he was in Magnificent Seven with Denzel Washington. He was the Indian shooting the bow in that movie. He's in Wind River. He's in 1883, which is right now on Prime Video. But yeah, I gave Mark, he lives here in Phoenix. And so one of my friends, we joke we're the only 2 Tlingit down here in Arizona. But yeah, I gifted him one of my snowboards. So it's working with companies like LibTech has been great. It's like a dream for sure. This is a panel carving depicting Raven. See, in our stories, Raven was all white in the beginning. He was an all white bird. And when he released the sun into the sky, you'll see image of Raven. He's carrying the sun in his beak. And he flew up through the clan house, through the smoke hole. And the soot from the smoke hole is what turned Raven black. And so that's what this depicts. It's a kind of abstract, but you have Raven's wing on the top and bottom, then Raven's face kind of the upper portion of the piece, and the circle is the sun. Then below it's his tail feathers and his claw. But this is actually a piece I carved for LibTech snowboards. It's the graphic for next year's snowboard that's being released. So it looks really good on the snowboard.
I think, was there, are, are those, is that the end of the slides then?
Yeah,
Oh,
Raven. Yeah. How are we doing on time? We're doing okay?
I think we're nearing the end, and we had so much participation and so much interest. And one question was about purchasing authentic work, purchasing your work. I know you said you had one piece in the Heard Museum
Yeah.
shop currently. Will the North Dakota Museum have some of your work also?
That museum show is, the pieces aren't for sale in that museum exhibit. It's just on display. But this piece is Raven Mask. It took second place in Santa Fe in 2019 for wood sculpture, which was cool. But it's in the Heard Museum Gallery. I have a bentwood chest too in the Heard Museum Gallery as well. That's for sale. Yeah, but you could also have pieces available on my website. It's just jamesjohnsonnativeart.com is my website. Prints, things of that nature.
James, are you at the Heard Fair this year? Are you planning to be at the Heard Fair?
Yeah, I'll be at the fair this year
Terrific.
as well. Mhm.
And you also mentioned, or we talked about from time to time, you do, you're here at the Heard, different events. So we wanted everyone to pay attention to the Heard website so they could be alerted when you're here. Is there anything in closing that you would like to say? I think we're kind of at the end of our program here.
Yeah, no, that was great. I'm happy to share like the knowledge. It's hard to jam it all into, an hour. There's so much history and of the art form and our people. So like, if anyone has any questions, like always feel free to shoot me an email. I'm happy to connect with as many people as I can.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing you here at the Heard, and I know some of the folks who travel are going to try to see your work in South Dakota and other places. And we thank you so much for joining us today. And I think with all of the questions that were coming in, I couldn't keep up with all of them. I just apologize to everyone if we didn't get to your question. But maybe we can have you back and do this again. And
Yeah, part two.
all right. Okay. Well, thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, James.
Yeah. Thank you.